have been given the topic which is most talked about. Some countries are facing its second wave. Some of them are halfway through. So we'll discuss very briefly management of COVID-19. So this first slide is giving us an idea regarding the severity of the illness and generalized approach to treatment. So initial phase is the incubation period, which comprises of about 5 days, followed by the symptomatic phase. And as highlighted here, there is viral replication during that time period. After that, there is an early pulmonary phase and late pulmonary phase, during which there is immune dysregulation that is responsible for causing hypoxia or shortness of breath. So it is during that period that the patient will require supplemental oxygen, and if the oxygen requirement is not met enough, it might go to non-invasive ventilation and then invasive ventilation. So the ground glass infiltrates, which we usually appreciate, they get more pronounced in the late pulmonary phases. So basically, the treatment approach is consisting of the antiviral treatment and anti-inflammatory treatment. The time frame, duration of the treatment is important in this particular scenario. I would be discussing each one of them in detail in the next slides. So this slide shows us actually the timing of desaturation, the viral replication, and inflammatory response. As soon as the viral replicates during the incubation period and symptomatic period, the pulmonary phase starts. And during the pulmonary phase, there is an inflammatory response. It is during that time frame that steroids would start there by benefiting the patient. So we have to start the anti-inflammatory drugs during 10 to 12 days. And then we need to escalate the treatment as and when required. So monitoring, whenever we an admission, we are seeing a patient or suspicion that the patient is having COVID-19, we would like to perform few tests, which includes blood complete picture. And in this blood complete picture, we would like to see neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, C-reactive protein, procalcitonin levels, D-dimers, drops, and magnesium. And then followed by this, on daily basis, we need to monitor ferritin levels, D-dimers, and C-reactive protein. Echocardiography, I have mentioned in this slide because cardiac causes leads to the mortality in COVID-19, but it would only be performed if a patient has comorbidities like hypertension or diabetes or cardiac comorbidities, or if we are suspecting that the patient has stress cardiomyopathy. Otherwise, routinely, it's not indicated. Now, there is no magic bullet in cure and management or prevention of COVID-19, but this is a cocktail which consists of vitamin D3, vitamin C, B, melatonin, zinc, famotidine, and ivermectin. This is effective, easy to access, easily available, and cheap. So it's being included for the prophylaxis of the disease. However, there is no definitive role of these drugs. Regarding the hydroxychloroquine, it was used earlier, but considering the fact that there were trials being conducted about it, there is no role of hydroxychloroquine. Vitamin D3 levels, if they are decreased in a patient who is suffering from COVID-19, it is associated with the more severity of the disease. Now, whenever we are managing patients with COVID-19, we divide them into two categories. One is the non-severe disease, other is severe disease. And then severe disease is divided into two categories for the patients who have severe disease, but they do not require oxygen. Second are patients who have severe disease and they need oxygen. They might need supplemental or low flow oxygen or high flow oxygen or NIV, and they might need intubation as well. And the management is different in each case scenario. So symptomatic patients are given the similar cocktail as I have mentioned it in the previous slide in prophylaxis. The only addition is acetyl salicylic acid. It acts as antithrombotic, anti-inflammatory in patients who are already suffering from COVID-19. Unless and until contraindicated, it can be used. Omega-3 fatty acids, they have their anti-inflammatory role in COVID-19. They can be used. And hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine is no longer recommended for symptomatic patients. Now, mildly symptomatic patients. These are the patients which we encounter during our ward rounds. They are present on the floor. They might need or not need oxygen. And if there is oxygen requirement, it's only less than 4 liters, which there's low flow oxygen. So the mainstay of treatment is corticosteroids. And I would like to mention here that COVID-19 is a steroid responsive disease, but timing is very critical in this particular scenario. So the dosage of steroids is different. There are some trials. There's recovery trial that mentions dexamethasone 6 milligram dosage. If dexamethasone cannot be given because it has got its drug interactions with cytochrome 3A4, so in that case scenario, prednisolone 40 mg can be used. Another alternative is methylprednisolone 32 mg, which can be used. So this is in mildly symptomatic patients. Along with corticosteroids, remdesivir has got its role. There was a trial for remdesivir called Solidarity Trial, in which it provided maximum benefit to the patient who are on oxygen. It provides benefit in some of the patients who are mildly symptomatic, not on oxygen, but the role is limited. And thirdly, if the patient is on ventilatory support, then there is no mortality benefit. So the endpoint of Solidarity trial was that there is no mortality benefit over a 28-day period of remdesivir, but it reduces the recovery time. Anticoagulation has to be used according to D-dimer value. Therapeutic anticoagulation is required if D-dimer is twice the upper limit of normal. Then combination of vitamin C, B, and zinc, famotidine, omega-3 fatty acids along with melatonin can be used. Dosage of melatonin varies in mild to moderate diseases. In mild diseases, we have to give a very short dose, like small dose, 2 milligram, and later on it can be escalated as and when required. Now comes progressive respiratory symptoms. So this Math Plus, which you can see in this slide, has been taken from Eastern Virginia Medical School protocol. It comprises of high dose of intravenous corticosteroids, intravenous ascorbic acid, thiamine, and heparin. So this is Math Plus, simple. And in addition to this Math Plus protocol, we have to add atorvastatin, 40 to 80 milligram, magnesium, because hypermagnesemia can be lethal in cases of COVID-19. We have to maintain euvolemia. Broad spectrum antibiotics can be used, procalcitonin guided, or if and when required. And in cases of vasodilatory shock, norepinephrine has to be started early. Then, if the patient is still not responding to the treatment, we have to escalate the respiratory support. So in COVID, we try to avoid intubation as much as possible by bridging oxygen supplementation with low flow nasal cannula, high flow nasal cannula, invasive mechanical ventilation with different vent settings. And another thing is prone positioning. The exact indication for which is very unclear, but if a patient is on ventilatory support and his PO2 FiO2 ratio is less than 150, he would benefit from prone positioning. Then after this, if the patient still deteriorates, we have to consider the salvage therapies. Now, the salvage therapies are of two categories in this particular scenario. One are those who have their definitive roles, that is evidence-based. Second are those who are under clinical trials, or they have, up till now, they have no definitive role. So salvage therapies comprises of high-dose corticosteroids. The dose is 120 to 250 milligram, 6 to 8 hourly. Plasma exchange, 5 sessions. Still, data is limited regarding this. And if the patient has been escalated in all aspects and we believe that the hypoxemia is not responding to proning or high dose of steroid, despite the maximum vent settings, then we have to consider improvement. We have to consider for tissue plasminogen activators, in which we give half the dose, that is 25 milligram of tissue plasminogen activators to improve the pulmonary microcirculation. And then this infusion has to be continued for 24 hours. Now the next salvage treatment is tocilizumab, cetuximab, convalescent serum, monoclonal antibodies. It has got no role. And antifibrotic with steroids. Actually, the thought behind antifibrotic therapy in this particular scenario is that ECMO has got no role in COVID-19 since it's a very fibroproliferative disease and it leads to fibrosis. So, antifibrotic therapy, if used in conjunction with steroids, may have a role in this particular scenario, but there is no data to support it right now. Then comes the post ICU care. We have to continue low molecular weight heparin. It would be guided by the age of patient if he is more than 60, D-dimer if they are twice upper limit of normal, CRP if they are twice upper limit of normal, and other comorbidities obviously. Then steroids, we have to taper the dose slowly and gradually, and this has to be guided by the oxygen therapy as well, vitamin C and melatonin. Now, there is another thing which I would like to discuss regarding the de-isolation. I have not included it here probably. This is a recommendation by CDC that if a patient has mild disease, or in other words, non-severe disease that I have discussed earlier, the patient can be de-escalated after 10 days of symptoms or 24 hours after the fever is settled without any antipyretics. So the cutoff is 10 days. And secondly, if the patient has moderate to severe disease, he required oxygen or remained on ventilatory support, then the duration of de-isolation goes to 21 days. Currently, CDC is not recommending COVID PCR repeat testing for isolation or for de-isolation. Now, if the patient has already suffered from COVID-19 infection and he's asymptomatic, so for 3 months he doesn't need to get any PCR testing done. And if he has any kind of symptoms after 3 months that are not otherwise explained by any other medical condition, by any other I mean respiratory condition, then PCR might need to be done in that particular case scenario. So this is all. Thank you very much. So in COVID-19, we use supplemental oxygen, non-invasive oxygen, and ventilatory support. I have to mention that when we are working in ICU, we work as a team, and we have our team of respiratory therapists here. They are all very hardworking, and they have been supporting us a lot, setting the BiPAPs for us, high flows oxygen, maintaining the vent settings, doing suctionings, performing the PCRs. So there's a lot of work done on that part.